Welcome to our 2024 season of the Cloud Industry Forum presents TWF. We're speaking to you live from our mixed reality studio with the help of our friends here at Disruptive Live. On this TechWave Forum podcast, we interview a guest from our members or someone with something to say about cloud technology or AI or digital transformation or leadership, or maybe they've got ideas on what's coming next. I'm David Terrar. I'm the CEO of the Cloud Industry Forum, which is a not-for-profit trade body that champions and helps accelerate the adoption of cloud technology and services. If you want to find more about what we do and how we help, go to cloudindustryforum.org. I'm at DT on X, David_Terrar on Threads and Instagram, and I'm easy to find on the web and LinkedIn and the like. Now, for today's show, we are getting the cloud customer viewpoint. We're talking to someone with in-depth experience of enterprise-level public cloud adoption and management, and from his time at some major well-known brands, he'll be relating his experience. We'll talk about his approach to the cloud landscape, how he's seen it develop, his approach to strategy, and he's got a new take on digital transformation, which will be interesting. I'm delighted to welcome Jay Patel to the show. Jay, welcome, and please can you introduce yourself, who you work for and what you do, please?
Thank you, David. Good to be here. And yeah, my name is Jay Patel. And a little bit about myself. In my most recent role, I am head of cloud platforms at Citi. And essentially, what that means is I'm looking after their cloud services across AWS and GCP, look after their API gateways, and also a little bit around Vertex AI, Gen AI responsibilities as well, and proof of concepts there. So I've been at Citi for a year and a bit, year and a half, coming up to 2 years. And previously, before that, I joined as the platform architect at Maersk, and then transitioned into the product owner, then transitioned into the head of Always On. Always On was the name of the platform, the cloud platform that we built there. And then before that, I spent close to 10 years in the defense world at Thales. And before that, I cut my teeth on the rational tool space, so rational clear case, clear quest, and so on, and all the tooling around developer tooling, etc. And then at my core, I started off as a software engineer at British Telecom, so I come from that software engineering background. So yeah, that's me. I've done sort of the dev side and a lot of the ops side of cloud.
Fantastic. Now, can you tell us some more about the kind of like the public cloud landscape that you've managed at Citi and Maersk? I mean, do you work with multiple cloud providers? Do they have private cloud and legacy on-premise solutions and workloads too? How does it work?
Yeah, so at Citi, it's, as I mentioned, AWS and GCP are the main cloud providers. We do have some Azure things starting, but not in the engineering space. We essentially use a lot of application hosting services, and Citi's approach is enabling services that the developers, the wide-ranging needs of developers across Kubernetes, across EC2 instances, databases, etc. So essentially, Citi's cloud, public cloud group that I'm part of builds up the infrastructure, the platform, the data services, etc., and so on, and releases that to the developers. We do that in 3 phases. We're at the third phase of our cloud program. The first phase is foundations, where we build out the foundational capabilities, some of the security, the pipelines to do releases and deployments. Then our second phase is what we call flagships, where we look at the large programs that can really move the needle for our business if we move them across to cloud. And then the third phase is scaled adoption. And that's where we, as the name suggests, we scale the adoption of our cloud services. So that's one approach. At Maersk, we took a different approach in terms of our cloud program. So it's called Always On. One of the key drivers there, the clues in the name, it's always on. So availability was extremely important. It was our North Star for what we were trying to achieve. And that was essentially running a startup in the first year or two, building up the cloud services, building out the cloud native applications, and so on, and then scaling that over year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 into the enterprise, as each component of our cloud became a platform in its own right. And that was a bit more of a holistic view rather than just enabling individual services that we do at Citi. And I should mention at Maersk, we use IBM Cloud. We started with IBM Cloud because at the time they weren't, out of the hyperscaler race that we have today for cloud providers, and also Azure.
Very good. Now, the cloud term itself started to gain traction way back in 2007. How have you seen cloud solutions and platforms develop and evolve over that time to now?
Yeah, 2007 was a long time ago. So back in 2007, we were still sort of going through the transition of physical infrastructure to virtual infrastructure. So VMware was I remember I was starting up VMware ESX servers and going through the whole virtualization side of things. And that was, without having heard the term, that was sort of cloud to us at the time, even though it was running on our data centers, sometimes even running under people's desks on their desktop computers and so on. Really started coming into cloud, at least from my perspective, when OpenStack started coming on. And then we wanted to sort of link the physical hardware and the virtualized hardware together and move completely towards virtualization. I was at Thales at the time, and we bought our data center in Doncaster, and we were starting to have conversations around how do we enable that for our distributed offices and have people essentially move away from local infrastructure into the data centers. And that was the first sort of a private cloud. There was lots of conversations, back then the technology stack was very different. We were having conversations about Vagrant versus Docker and Docker Swarm and Mesos, automation technologies like Puppet, Chef, a lot of things that have since evolved into the more cloud native tools that we use today. So we went from that virtualization to containerization, and then from containerization we saw the people still running their on-prem infrastructure. So Citi, for example, still has an extremely large private cloud infrastructure. And then our public cloud came along. Obviously I mentioned IBM Cloud, there's AWS, GCP, Azure, etc. really started giving us cloud services, which is more than just infrastructure. And that's the evolution that I've seen as we sort of move into IaaS and infrastructure as a service, into PaaS, platform as a service, and then today in 2024, a lot of companies and a lot of my work is around sort of how do we deliver internal software as a service and consume SaaS services and then developer platforms in that model.
Now, cloud economics and the FinOps topic has become more and more talked about, and even people are talking about cloud repatriation. What are your thoughts on that and your approach to optimization and managing the budget?
FinOps is such a big subject, so it's a really good question. The way I think about it and what I've done is sort of think of Fin and Ops as two different parts. And I know FinOps is the new term, and we haven't quite sort of figured out yet, or we're just starting to figure out how the two merge together. One of the biggest or the first things that they always approach in a financials aspect is not a lot of companies are quite ready to move from that CapEx operating model to the OpEx operating model. And that's where a lot of the cost savings and optimizations can come from once you move into the OpEx. And that's outside of generally the technology arm of the organization. That's more around the financial side. And their processes take a while. So it's a process issue. Meanwhile, I think what the technology teams and the cloud teams can really focus on is visibility, because to optimize and get the best out of the return on investment for cloud, you have to have the visibility and know what's happening. So we in Maersk and Citi, we used Aptio's cloud ability to give us that visibility, make sure that we're paying the right amounts and be able to charge back for what we are using in our cloud services. The ops part of it is relatively new, at least for me, and implementing spot instances and really leveraging the dynamic scalability of cloud. That requires its own, um, essentially a team to do that, and that's going to be tied into what we're doing on the financial side. So this is where I see in my experience FinOps has started coming together. But one of the main things that I've seen is the operational overhead that creates. And I think as an industry, we haven't quite solved for that yet because we don't have the processes matured enough, at least in a lot of the large organizations. And we don't have the operational maturity yet or the tooling to really abstract away all the operational overhead that the financials brings to delivering cloud services, and the operational overhead that creates. Having dynamic scalability can, as you can imagine, create issues for our support teams, our support SREs, etc. When things are popping up and down scaling, and then you've got financial tools tied to that. So I've had a lot of challenges with that, but it's a rapidly evolving space.
Yeah, very good to hear. Now, tell us a bit more about your strategy. What are your primary goals in using the cloud services you're using?
So I get asked the question quite a lot in terms of how much are we going to move on to cloud, what's our migration strategy, and so on. And primary goals is a key part of that conversation. One thing that always comes up is how much are we going to move from our private cloud into public cloud, etc., and so on. And the key thing is moving the right things onto cloud or building the right things in the cloud for the right reasons. So to answer the question, the goals are around scalability. Can we scale so if we take Citi, for example, we can't scale our physical data centers in regions faster than the cloud providers. And our customers need to use cloud services across the globe. The same thing at Maersk. We had 2 data centers in Copenhagen, but our customers are global, so that being able to scale into China, into Asia, into North America, etc., South America, and so on. That scalability of our infrastructure, and that then follows on from scalability of our applications as well. So being able to scale our applications on demand based on the cyclical events of our businesses, whether that's on a Monday morning we get more customers, or whether that's in January we see a spike in bookings or financial payments, etc., and so on. Cloud really gives us that scalability. So that's one of the primary goals. There are a few, as I mentioned, with Maersk and Always On. Availability was our North Star, and what we really wanted to do was increase our availability for our underlying infrastructure to 4 nines availability, and increase the availability of our business services. And having things like regional failover, being able to create environments and on demand, being able to leverage the failover and resiliency of Kubernetes, etc., is really important. And being able to do that in our cloud providers is very easy. So that's the second goal. The third one that I'll mention, which is really important that cloud enables as well, is not quite return on investment, but what I call return on innovation. Cloud services are available very easily to stand up. So that barrier to entry is really easy. And innovation is always a really key goal in large organizations and small organizations, but specifically at Maersk and Citi. And I use the example of AI and the boom in Gen AI. If I go back to the late 2000s, early 2010s, etc., if you wanted to use machine learning, you'd have to get a lot of infrastructure. You have to train your models. That's a very time-consuming, very costly process, and your successes are found sort of years later on whether that was actually successful, that investment, or not. Whereas now in the modern cloud world, using cloud services, you can just turn on the Gen AI services or the AI services and start consuming them and get that return on that innovation very, very quickly. So the barrier to entry and what that enables for your business to move faster and be more agile is not to be underestimated. So those are the primary goals that I've had in my time at Maersk and Citi when having delivered these cloud platforms. So scalability, availability, and innovation.
Yeah, makes good sense. What can you tell us about how you kind of evaluate and select different cloud service providers?
Another really good question, and I've got lots of thoughts on this, and I've had conversations with all the cloud providers around this. In terms, obviously, as I evaluate cloud providers, evaluate which services are we going to consume, how do application workloads land in specific cloud providers, and the easy answer is look at the strengths and weaknesses, because it's going to be different for different businesses based on size, maturity, and various other sort of business landscape and market forces. Each of the cloud providers have strengths and weaknesses, and I won't get into what those are, or at least my opinion on those, because I've got lots of friends in at the cloud providers, and um, yeah, I won't get. They don't like me telling them what their weaknesses are. Let's put it that way. But have a look at sort of what the strengths and weaknesses are. One thing that I use, and actually all the cloud providers have just recently announced their Q1 earnings and the financials, is look at where the cloud providers are investing their money, because that will give you an idea on what their strengths and weaknesses are, and give you a good comparison. As they provide the breakdown on their earnings, and you can look back throughout the last previous quarters, last previous years on the trajectory, and have a look at their strategy. So where are they investing their money, and so on. The other thing that I'll mention is partnerships. Your cloud providers are going to become strategic partners in your business. They're going to become crucial in whatever you're delivering as a business. So make sure you build really good partnerships with your cloud providers. Make sure you have the right resources. And mention always on and full nines availability. When we did have issues, that you want your cloud providers to be on the support calls, on the bridge calls, in the war rooms, etc., helping you diagnose and troubleshoot these issues that inevitably crop up all the time, very quickly, very efficiently, etc., and really be responsive and proactive as well in helping you deliver your cloud strategies. The other thing that I'll mention in terms of sort of evaluating and selecting cloud service providers is a lot of the services, and almost all of them now, are becoming a commodity. So there's this concept of cloud as a commodity now that I'm a firm believer in, and have been pushing now as I've seen these cloud providers and the services they provide mature to where they are today. So if I take, for example, database technologies, which one you use doesn't make that much difference, because all of the main database technologies, whether you're using SQL, no SQL, etc., and so on, are available. You have cloud marketplaces out of all of our cloud providers as well. So whatever third-party databases you're using, whether it's Cassandra, MongoDB, etc., they're all available from all the cloud providers. Even the compute costs, the VPC costs, the Kubernetes costs per cluster, per compute, etc., is very similar, if not the same, across the cloud providers. So actually, it's becoming less and less important which cloud provider you actually use, and becoming more important in how you use it. What are the processes that fit around your usage of cloud services, and so on. So cloud is becoming a commodity. Cloud is a commodity. So I don't think it's as important which provider you use.
Interesting. Loads of really great advice in there in that answer, Jay. Thank you. When you look back at your time in managing these cloud platforms at Maersk and Citi, what do you think's been the biggest challenge in that you've hit?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge I've had in managing cloud platforms is, ironically, not around the technology. And to put it really simply, it's the people and the process. And I'll put an emphasis on the process side of things. We as technologists, we tend to get lost in the technologies, and the technologies is interesting and challenging in its own respect, but it pales in comparison to the processes, especially in large organizations that I've worked at. I mentioned Citi and Maersk quite a lot, and also Thales and British Telecom. One of the things that I've seen consistently, as challenges, not just in managing cloud platforms, but managing any sort of technology, is the processes around it. And if you don't get that right, then it doesn't matter if you've got the best technology in the world, or you've implemented the best architecture and so on. It lives and dies by the processes. How do people actually use this? How is it exposed out to our customers? How does it impact the wide business processes and the business services and so on, which is ultimately what we're trying to do by delivering cloud platforms. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest challenge, is get the processes and put a lot of focus on the process side of things. We'll also mention the people side quickly as well. And one of the things that I advise is have a look at your licensing costs across cloud, across your vendors and so on, and compare that as a ratio to your training costs for how well are you training your people to use these technologies. And that will give you a really good insight when you sort of start unlocking the value out of implementing these cloud services and technologies.
I love all of that. That's great. Now, in the run up to this show, I read your blog post on what you call digital transformation 2.0. And part of that approach uses Wardley maps and things. Tell us a bit about that and what Wardley maps are, please.
Yeah, of course. It's a passion of mine. It's got all my energy at the moment. So Wardley Maps is based on a concept created by somebody called Simon Wardley. He wrote the book on Wardley mapping, and essentially what that is a way to map out what the value of your business is, and what do you do there. And it's a technique to do that. I highly recommend the book. It's an open source book, so I believe you can just Google it, go to the Wardley Map website, Simon's website, download the book and start reading it. It's inspiring. It hooked me from the first chapter, as it started talking about strategies and so on. So really, the point of Wardley mapping is to help people build strategies around value. This transformation, I'm glad you brought that up, because I take every opportunity to talk about that at the moment. And work that I'm doing around digital transformation 2.0 is essentially taking Wardley maps, which came second to, actually, I've been working in team topology. So it merges. There's another book called Team Topologies, written by Matt Skelton and Manuel Pace. If people know it, you can Google Team Topologies, Google Wardley Maps, and that'll give you lots and lots of information. What I'm doing is merging the two together. Wardley Maps has part of the solution, and Team Topologies has part of the solution. Team Topologies is around how does value flow around an organization, and a Wardley map is essentially trying to map that out in a visual way that you can track and be iterative, etc., and so on. So there's real value in combining the two. And then what I do, because I'm quite analytical and data driven, is build a mathematical formula around this. And the formula that I use is Google's PageRank algorithm, which essentially, in its purest form, Google's sort of algorithm has changed as SEO has evolved over the years. But it started off in its early days as links into a website, links out, and giving you a hierarchy, essentially a rank of websites and web pages. And I applied that model because that works at an organizational level, and it works at a system design and a cloud level as well. In essentially, you have dependencies in and dependencies out, or inputs in, inputs out. So being able to sort of build that map of dependencies, build a team structure, or come up with a team topology of that, and then add in PageRank algorithm to sort of iteratively do that, gives you a really good framework for what is a transformation, what are you delivering, how are you going to deliver it, etc., and so on. So it's a concept that wasn't, I didn't come up with it myself. So give a shout out to the DevOps Institute and the paper that was written there around value stream architecture. But I'm taking that on and sort of evolving that into my experiences at large organizations. I've seen a lot of transformations in my time, agile transformations, DevOps transformations, cloud transformations. And I'm seeing transformations at the moment. So obviously the AI and Gen AI transformation, and I'm seeing all the good things and I'm seeing all the bad things. And having been in the industry for 20, 25 years, I'm now taking the sum of that experience and the learnings and all the things that I've come across, techniques like prioritization, Wardley maps, user journeys, all of these kind of things into a holistic model. And then, essentially that's I'm really excited about that because we look for silver bullets in helping us in various parts of our roles and our organizations. And I believe this is a silver bullet for how to deliver value and transformation across organizations. I could talk a lot. It's very passionate for me.
No, I get that. That's great. Tell me, all the things that we've been talking about over the last 20, 25 minutes, what do you think are the most important takeaways for our audience?
Um, Having been in the technology space, the one thing that's been at the core of my philosophy is embrace change. It doesn't, we've spoken a lot about cloud today. We started off talking about VMs and how technologies have changed from virtualization into containerization into cloud services, etc. And things will continue changing. AI is going to change things. Quantum computing, when it comes along, is going to change things. Web 3.0, when that finally comes along and matures, is going to change things. And that's always been true of the past in sort of the technologies and the organizations that we've been part of as well. So the key takeaway is embrace change, get used to it. It's the only constant in our industry, and the people and organizations that sort of get to that embracing change the fastest are successful.
That's been really brilliant, Jay. Now, if people want to find out more about what you do and the blog where I read that post, where do they look? How do they find you?
So the blog post is on jaypatel.uk. That's jaypatel.uk. I am on LinkedIn. If you search for Jay Patel, Jaypatel, and there's a lot of us, so search for Citi, CITI, and I should be the top link that comes up there to take you to my LinkedIn. And I've stayed away from social media, but now's the time. I do need to do some self-promotion, etc. So I am finally on Twitter, so at jpatel_UK there. And I've started putting some stuff on Twitter as well. So expect that I've not done any posts, or at least not many posts on LinkedIn, or I've only just joined Twitter and my blog. I've got 2 blog posts out at the moment, a couple more lined up coming in the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm growing my social media visibility. So yeah, come along and join me for the ride.
That will be great, Jay, because you've got lots of really good ideas, and it's been a delight to get your kind of major enterprise cloud viewpoints. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Jay's story and his particular perspective on the enterprise scale public cloud landscape. Great to hear his insights and his recommendations for what you ought to be doing. I love the new kind of digital transformation 2.0 approach, so check that out. We'll be back live next Wednesday at 2:30 UK time. We want your feedback, your suggestions, or maybe you want to be a guest on the show. Please put some comments here or email us at info@cloudindustryforum.org. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope to see you next time or next week.